Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a feeling that, well, if you've ever seriously used an AI tool, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that moment of pure frustration when it goes from being absolutely brilliant to completely baffling. Yeah, we're talking about the AI rage quit. But more importantly, how to take that moment and actually turn it into a better way forward. Let's get into it.
Our story kicks off with just 4 simple words from a junior developer, a guy named Timothy. He just finished a session with an AI that went so off the rails, his only move was to just stop. He closed the laptop and didn't touch it again for 3 days. It's a feeling that's probably a lot more familiar than most of us want to admit.
You know, Timothy's experience really points to a much bigger question, doesn't it? Have you ever felt that way? Kind of let down or honestly even betrayed by an AI tool? One second it's this genius partner, and the next it's just spitting out nonsense. Look, this feeling isn't just you. It's a totally universal part of the deal when you're working with these incredibly powerful and, yeah, sometimes really unpredictable systems. So to really get a handle on the rage quit, we first have to understand the pattern that triggers it. Timothy described this very specific cycle, and his senior colleague, Margaret, she gave it a name, the brilliant then terrible sequence. And this, right here, this is the absolute heart of the problem. So here's how it went down for Timothy. He gives the AI all this rich, detailed context for a technical summary. And what he gets back, it's genuinely impressive. I mean, we're talking a clean structure, precise language. It even offered a whole new way of framing the problem. But then he asks for the next part. And the output was, in his words, just garbage. It was vague, it was circular, and it kept getting worse with every single try. It felt like a totally different and, frankly, a much dumber system had just taken over the conversation. So why is this so maddening? Well, his colleague Margaret just nails it with this quote. If a tool is just kind of average all the time, you can plan around that. You know its limits. But when you get a flash of brilliance followed by total failure, you lose your baseline. You can never be sure what you're going to get. And that uncertainty, it is completely exhausting. So what is this rage quit moment, really? Is it just you losing your patience? According to Margaret, nope, it's something way more useful than that. It's not a bug in your personality, it's more like a feature of the interaction. It's a signal. And this is such a powerful way to reframe it. The rage quit isn't a personal failure. It's actually a really important piece of data. It's your brain telling you, hey, the gap between what I was hoping for and what I'm actually getting is just too big to deal with productively right now. It's a signal to just pause. And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. Actually closing the laptop, that's not the mistake. The mistake is what you conclude when you do it. It's deciding that the tool is fundamentally busted or that you've somehow failed. That conclusion is what shuts down the whole learning process. So what really happened to Timothy, and what happens to all of us, is that the brilliant first output moves the goalposts. It sets this impossibly high new standard in your mind. All of a sudden, an output that might have been just fine or even adequate now feels like an absolute catastrophe in comparison. You're not judging the work on its own merits anymore. You're judging it against that first flash of genius. Okay, but why does this even happen? Well, it turns out there are some very real structural reasons for all this inconsistency. An AI is not a calculator, right? It doesn't give you the same answer every single time. It's a far more dynamic and, well, complicated beast. You see, an AI's output is affected by all these variables that we can't even see. The quality of your initial context is absolutely huge. Remember, Timothy's first prompt was really dense and rich. But also, the specific way you freeze your next request matters. And even just the simple length of the conversation can start to degrade performance. Sometimes in a really long session, you hit a point of diminishing returns. So the key thing to get here is this. That first brilliant result, it wasn't just a lucky shot. It was probably the product of great context and a great prompt. But, and this is a big but, it was not a guarantee for everything that came next. Every new task is, in a way, a brand new negotiation with the tool. Okay, so if closing the laptop is a totally valid strategy, the next big question is, how do you come back? How do you get back to work without just dragging all that frustration and disappointment right back in there with you? Margaret lays out this super simple 3-step process for a productive return. First, just step away quietly. Don't slam the metaphorical door, right? Just recognize the feeling and press pause. The point of that time away isn't about punishment. It's about shifting your mindset.
about lowering the emotional temperature. And then, when you do come back, you come back with curiosity. Your job is to understand what went wrong, not to prove that the tool's a piece of junk. And this just brilliantly spells out the difference in mindset. You can come back carrying a grudge, defensive, just waiting for it to fail again. Or you can come back with curiosity, open to what might happen, and ready to actually diagnose the problem. And it was only when Timothy came back in that second mindset that he could see the situation for what it was. So, all of this really points to a fundamentally new and way more effective mindset for working with any of these generative AI tools. It's about making a shift from a place of constant frustration to one of genuine fluency. You know, the single most important thing to remember is that this whole experience is completely universal. It is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. Experts, senior engineers like Margaret, they all run into the brilliant then terrible sequence. Trust me, it gets everybody eventually. And that really brings us to the final takeaway here. The goal is not to somehow become immune to frustration. That's impossible. The goal is to get good at recognizing the feeling early, to close the laptop quietly, and to give yourself the space to come back when you can actually be a useful, curious partner in the process again. So the next time you feel that chasm opening up between what you expected and what you actually got, you'll know what it is. It isn't a failure. It's a signal. And the real question is, are you going to listen to it and close the laptop quietly, ready to come back with curiosity?